So, are musicians underpaid? Recently, there was an article stating out of the 43 billion generated by the music industry, musicians only received 12% of that. At face value, this sounds disgusting, but let's take a look and see if the numbers really are that bad. Let's take a look at some different entertainment industries and see how their performers get paid in comparison to music. One of the most pervasive forms of entertainment in the United States is sports. And let's take a look at how those players get paid. To do this, we're gonna have to do some math. In the NFL, the average player salary was $2.7 million in 2017. With around 1,700 players in the NFL, that means around $4,590,000,000 went to the players, which from a total revenue of $13 billion, players took home around 35% of that. Basketball has an average player salary of $6.3 million, 29% of the net income of the $6.5 billion going to the players. In baseball, the average salary was $4 million, resulting in 38% of the $10 billion in revenue going towards players. Alright, that's about the extent of the math I can do as a musician, but we were able to get some interesting facts from that, like the fact that entertainers in other industries are making 3 times as much comparatively as musicians are in their industry. Why? Well, there's a couple of reasons that come to mind. First, sports do not have to deal with piracy. A game is a much bigger audio and video download, and so people aren't uploading and downloading those nearly as much, along with the facts that games are less valuable as time goes on. A game that happened 4 weeks ago, hell, a game that happened 4 hours ago is not nearly as valuable as a game that's happening right now. While for music, a song that was written 19 years ago has just as much meaning as a song that was written 19 hours ago. This means businesses like the NFL, NBA, MLB can charge more for their streaming and game delivery services than the music industries can. Music streaming services have to keep the cost low enough where people would rather pay $10 a month for the convenience of streaming rather than dealing with the inconvenience of pirating music. Just because companies like Spotify and Apple Music charge less for their platforms doesn't mean they should be paying their artists, their content creators, less than 1/3 than what the content creators are being paid in sports. But when we compare both industries, we haven't taken one thing into account, and that's labels. The NFL, NBA, and MLB all own their broadcasting rights, which isn't necessarily true for artists, where the label is going to own the master in most cases. So this comparison with sports stops here. Because the players were able to negotiate directly with who owns the broadcasting, they were able to probably get a better deal. While when compared to music, artists are negotiating with labels who are then negotiating with Spotify. So let's take a look at an industry that better mirrors that. And I think the best example of that is Netflix. Netflix led the way on streaming, and examining where Netflix is today can give context for where the music streaming industry will be in the future. Netflix, like Spotify, relied on external movies and TV studios to initially supply the content for their website, just how Spotify relies on labels to supply music for their business as well. A key difference between Netflix and Spotify is how much money they bring home to invest in their company. 66 cents of every dollar Netflix makes goes towards movie studios for licensing their products. The other 34 cents goes to Netflix as a profit. Spotify, on the other hand, was paying 88 cents per dollar made to record labels. In 2017, 88 cents was negotiated down to 79 cents per dollar, but that's still leaving Spotify in a precarious position. Netflix was able to use that income to start investing into their own projects, which made them less reliant on external movie studios. Spotify is starting to do the same by investing into mid-tier musical acts. Not wanting to step on the toes of major labels, Spotify is starting to invest into acts that aren't signed yet but could help develop their own catalog. These deals with mid-tier artists are giving the artists a sizable advance at the cost of a lower streaming rate. These artists are also allowed to place their music on other streaming platforms. Spotify is also starting to create some music that can only be heard on Spotify on the chill and relax playlist. By cutting out the middleman in the label, artists may get a more sizable portion of the music earnings. So, what role do labels play in the music industry now? While labels have taken advantage of artists in the past, they have provided a valuable service in being curators of good and bad music for the general public. And they have the resources for promotion and advertising. Both of these services can now be provided by streaming platforms. Spotify is already promoting and curating artists by determining which ones get placed into which playlist. And they determine which gets placed into your weekly and daily playlist. And if you want to learn more about how algorithms affect your listening habits, check out my past video. Spotify has to walk a tightrope with these labels, however. They own most of their catalog. But they do want to bring the cost of doing business down with these labels. So if they were able to get a big act that isn't signed to a label, that helped them a lot. And it will probably be better for musicians because it can cut out the middleman and artists can get more sizable advances. We may soon be entering a spot where multiple streaming services are signing artists and developing them exclusively on their platforms. Think of it as Netflix's Stranger Things or HBO's Game of Thrones. Spotify might get the next big artist and create a race between them and Apple Music to see who is getting the next big artist for their platforms. We also might see major labels trying to create their own streaming services, just how CBS is doing with CBS All Access. This previous May, Sony sold off half its shares in Spotify, and Warner Music Group sold off 75%. Both of these companies still receive the bulk of the income that Spotify's making, however, but this might be a sign that they're trying to develop their own streaming platforms. While artists are only getting paid 12% of the total earnings, that is better than the 7% they were making in the year 2000. By cutting out the middleman in the transaction between Spotify, the label, and then the artist might get paid more in the form of bigger guarantees. While people behind the scenes definitely deserve to get paid, when an entire industry is made off the work of these artists and they're only receiving 12% of the income, much less when compared to sports, it might be time for a change. Hey everyone, I hope you liked this video. Please hit like, subscribe, and get notified if you did. If you have any ideas about different music topics that you'd like to learn more about, please leave it in the comments below. I'll see you next week. Peace.